special edition of Sports Talk Philadelphia here on LaSalle TD. We're going to have our Behind the Mic segment today. Tyler was kind enough to bring Dan Baker, Phillies, Eagles PA announcer on. Dan, thank you very much for coming on to the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Andrew and Tyler. It's great to be here on Sports Talk Philadelphia.
All right, Dan, it's absolutely great to have you here. Now, of course, on this Behind the Mic segment, what we do is we take a look as this is what Dave Grzybowski, our former host, would do in the past when he'd have an announcer or such as yourself on. He'd take a look back at their career and about just where they are now and how they got there. So without further ado, let's begin that segment with you. So, of course, let's start from the beginning. How'd you really get your start in your career? Like, what really led you to really what everyone knows you for, which is PA announcing at stadiums?
Well, as a youth, I wanted to be an athlete. I think we all grow up hoping that we could play professionally. With me, it was baseball and basketball. I did play a couple of years of junior varsity basketball as an undergraduate at Rowan University. But, you know, you come to that realization you're not going to play at the professional level. So I thought, how could I, you know, stay close to sports? I just loved it so much. From the time that my father took my brother and me to a Phillies game at Connie Mack Stadium, not too far from LaSalle, at 21st Street and Lehigh Avenue in North Philadelphia. It's called Shibe Park, then Connie Mack Stadium, in honor of the former Athletics Hall of Fame manager. But I just love the atmosphere of going to the ballpark, and I can remember as a kid going to Convention Hall and seeing the Philadelphia Warriors. They're, of course, now the Golden State Warriors. And, of course, going to the Palestra and seeing Big Five basketball, LaSalle, Penn St. Joe, Temple, and Villanova. And I always wished that, you know, if I couldn't play at that level, that, well, maybe I could announce or do something. I think I would have sold popcorn at the earliest of ages, you know, just to have an opportunity to be there in that great atmosphere. And so my last 2 years as an undergraduate at then Glassboro State College, now Rowan, I began working for a UHF television station in Philadelphia, Channel 48, WKBS TV, located at 3201 South 26th Street in Philadelphia. And there I did statistics for some of the sports telecasts, college football, college basketball. Worked with a guy named Stu Nahan. He was a children's show host on that station and also a sportscaster, and you might remember him as the ringside play-by-play announcer, the white-haired gentleman in the Rocky movies, Stu Nahan. So Stu introduced me to some other NFL announcers, and I did statistics at Franklin Field, a former home of the Eagles, for a lot of NFL Sundays. And I was always pretty good at networking, meeting people, and one thing would lead to another. But when I was at Channel 48, I actually had a chance to do play-by-play for a high school football game on television. And then I used to fill in when I was at Channel 48. I actually did some ring announcing, substitute ring announcing for the WWF, the Worldwide Wrestling Federation. And in this corner, he weighs 265 pounds in the green tights. From Abruzzi, Italy, Bruno Sammartino. So I used to do that as well. I just filled in for a couple. But the guy for whom I filled in, a great announcer in his own right, Buddy Wagner, he also owned an Auto Daredevil show. And so when I graduated from Glassboro State College in 1968, I started teaching in the school district of Philadelphia. And I had my summers free, so I would go on the road and announce these Auto Daredevil shows. Cars that would crisscross at high rates of speed and go on their sides down the straightaway, or they would do ramp-to-ramp jumps and things like that. So, I mean, I've done a lot of different things. But what I always wanted to do was, you know, baseball, football, basketball. Those were the main things I grew up with. And my big break came when former director of operations at the Philadelphia Phillies, Pat Cassidy, arranged for me to get an interview with Bill Giles in the fall of 1971. And that was the first year of baseball and football at Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia, at the Venerable Vet at Broad and Patterson's, now a big parking lot. And so I interviewed with Bill, and luckily enough, Bill hired me to become the Phillies PA announcer beginning in April 1972. And this coming season, we're not that far away, March 31st is the regular season opener, we'll start my 43rd year. I'm the senior PA announcer in all of Major League Baseball, with the retirement of the late, great Bob Shepard of the New York Yankees. At the end of the 2007 season, I became the senior PA announcer in Major League Baseball. And next year will be my 30th with the Eagles, and I would think that that places me pretty high on the seniority list in the National Football League, but I don't know where exactly. So that's it in a nutshell.
Oh, quite a ride indeed, like you said. So obviously you're known for doing both football at Lincoln Financial Field for the Eagles and the Army-Navy game, and for baseball at Citizens Bank Park. Did you have a favorite sport just growing up? Like, obviously, like you said, you wanted to be an athlete, you were a big sports fan. Did you have like one or two favorites that you were interested in that you kind of wanted to get into, like you said, if you wanted to be an athlete?
I think baseball was my favorite. I think that was the sport I was best at. But I was a pretty good athlete, but there's a lot of pretty good athletes. You know, you have to be just an exceptional athlete to play professionally, even at the Division I college level. And when I started getting interested in this, you know, maybe sports announcing, although I used to mimic announcers growing up as a kid. Now, you guys are probably too young, and these terrific cameramen and everybody probably too young to remember Dave Zinkoff, who was the Philadelphia 76ers, and prior to that, the Philadelphia Warriors PA guy, and at one time did the Harlem Globetrotters. And he was a terrific public address voice. So I used to imitate him. And did you ever hear him do his introduction of Julius Erving?
Julius the Doctor.
Yeah.
I
And
always
it
hear your
forward from the
tapes.
University of Massachusetts, number 6, Julius Erving. That's a bad imitation of Dave Zinkoff. But no, he was terrific. And I thought, boy, that's exciting. I wouldn't mind doing, you know, stuff like that. And luckily enough, here I am.
Mm-hmm. And that must be interesting to consider. I mean, I don't know if you hear, but like so many people I know, I know a couple friends who actually went to LaSalle who can actually now, ironically enough, do a Dan Baker impression.
Oh, thank you. Well,
and obviously just like out of greatest respect, because it's so cool to go and hear your voice at the ballpark for so many years. And speaking of the ballpark, I mean, obviously, like you said, now that you're senior PA announcer for all of Major League Baseball, I'm sure now your routine has been basically kind of I'm all hat. Like, can you take us kind of through your daily routine of going through the ballpark, or going through pregame preparations and everything that goes with it before the start of a game?
Sure, Tyler and Andrew. I usually get to the ballpark for a Phillies game about 2 hours before the game starts. For an Eagles game, about 3 hours before kickoff, because there are more things to do in the football experience. But I'll get there early and go over my script. I do, as you may know from attending baseball games at Citizens Bank Park, I'm one of the few, if not only, PA announcers who actually introduces the starting lineups from the field. And I also do a lot of pregame presentations. So, you know, I'll read through my script and make sure I know how to pronounce all the words on the script, any difficult names. And really the same with, I make sure that I'm familiar with the rosters. Obviously, I'm seeing the Phillies every night, so there's not too many surprises there. But when a different team comes to town, there may be a few that I really need to learn more about to make sure that I can pronounce their names correctly.
Mm-hmm. So that's very interesting. And now, like, over the years, you've had a lot of great moments both at the Veterans Stadium, Citizens Bank Park, Lincoln Financial Field. Can you take us through a couple of your favorite moments just overall to witness there as being part of the moment as a PA announcer?
Well, this ring that I'm wearing on my finger is one of those moments.
I'm sure that tells a lot.
2008, with the Phillies win their second World Series championship. 1980, when they win their first World Series championship, and I, of course, had the privilege to do that. In fact, you know, the highlights for me are the team accomplishments. By the way, I root for everything Philadelphia, college, and I mentioned the Big Five, but I did Drexel for many, many years, and I root for those Dragons too. And high school, all the pro sports, the Sixers and the Flyers, and incidentally, I filled in for Dave Zinkoff doing PA, and I filled in for Lou Nolan at the Flyers, and Lou does a great job too. But the highlights for me are the 5 World Series that the Phillies have participated in. Of course, they were also in the World Series in 1915. Wasn't around for that. And I was only 4 years old in 1950, and I hadn't embarked on my professional career yet. But I did have the privilege of announcing 5 of the 7 World Series in which the Phillies have participated. 1980, 1983, 1993, 2008, and 2009. And those were the highlights. Of course, I've done 3 NFC championship games for the Philadelphia Eagles, 2002, 2003, 2004. I worked the 1980 NFL championship, NFC championship, in which the Eagles defeated the Cowboys. Wilbert Montgomery had that great run. But I wasn't the PA announcer for that. Matt Gucas Sr., my predecessor, was. And but for that game, I was a spotter in the CBS television network booth with Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire. So that was a highlight. When the I didn't announce it, but when Wilt Chamberlain and the Philadelphia 76ers beat the Boston Celtics in 1967, that was one of the highlights for me. I grew up hating the Celtics because they beat the Warriors so many times, and so that was a highlight for me. So many Big Five games that I've done over the years. LaSalle games. I had the privilege of doing LaSalle in the NCAA tournament with Lionel Simmons and Doug Overton and Randy Woods, and Speedy Morris did such a great job as a head coach. Current head coach John Giannini is a dear friend. John and I knew each other from his days as head coach at Rowan University, where he led the Profs to a Division III national championship, and what a great job he's doing here as head coach of the Explorers, 3 NCAA tournament wins. And a lot of my heroes growing up, Tom Gola, who recently passed away, Wilt Chamberlain, Guy Rogers on basketball side, Chuck Bednarik, the great linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles, Tommy McDonald, and then for the Phillies, Robin Roberts, Richie Ashburn, later Dick Allen, Johnny Callison. So those are some of my highlights and some of my heroes.
All right, quite a storied career for Dan Baker. All right, so thank you very much for that Behind the Mic segment, a great insight into your career. And now we're going to take a quick commercial break, but when we get back, Andrew will be back at the hosting helm, and you and I will be talking with him about the upcoming season for the 2014 Philadelphia Phillies. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
We have a job to do out here today.
To be a winning team, you have to work like a winning team.
My team depends on me.
And my team is 50,000 strong. Looks like a lot of work's going into this.
This is what it feels like to be part of a team.
A winning team.
The Action Team.
Are you ready? Action Team! Action!
Get in on the action at actionteam.org. Are you in?
The environment is my passion. Every day, I live for the outdoors and all of its challenges. That's why I enlisted in the Coast Guard. Now, I serve to protect the environment and defend my country. It's like I was born for this.
Were you born ready for a greater challenge? Find out at GoCoastGuard.com.
Training is about more than muscle. It's about inner strength. So I push myself. That's why I serve in the United States Coast Guard. I train with the best. A team that shares my drive and commitment. We collect intelligence, guard our shores against drug smugglers, and keep our waterways safe because our nation expects more.
If you expect more, maybe you were born ready. Find out at GoCoastGuard.com.
Hi, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Nicole Malakowski, a U.S. Air Force Fighter Squadron Commander and the first woman pilot with the United States Air Force Aerial Demonstration Team. My fellow airmen and I know that each of us plays a huge part in our victories, whether in the air or on the ground. We couldn't accomplish our mission without using everyone's skills to reach our goals. Embracing our differences and working together is also what has made America strong. Thank you for your support, and remember, our strength lies in our diversity. This message brought to you by the United States Air Force.
Sports Talk Philadelphia. We're going to dive right into kind of our normal routine here on Sports Talk on LaSalle TV. We're going to jump right into Phillies talk. As the 2014 season approaches, Phillies are getting ready. The big news this week is they signed A.J. Burnett. We can take a look at his stats from last year. He was 10-11 in 30 starts. He pitched over 190 innings. ERA of 3.3. He started the season really well and kind of faded off as some pitchers do to end the year. Guys, what do you think of the signing of A.J. Burnett? Is it going to help the Phillies, or is it just kind of they needed a pitcher?
Contrary to what we've been saying a lot on this show about Ruben Amaro Jr.'s off-season, believe it or not, I actually really like this signing. I think A.J. Burnett, he fills in that good middle-of-the-rotation role. He'll be a good number 3 once Hamels is 100% healthy, and he'll be a good pitcher behind Cliff Lee, so that'll be a good, nice 1-2-3 combination. And what's good about A.J. Burnett is he's really matured over the years, and you mentioned his stats this past season. 9.8 strikeouts through 9 innings, leading all of baseball. So he's yes, he's a veteran, but it's only a 1-year deal. He's a solid option number 3. So I think he'll really be there, and I think he's a way better upgrade of a number 3 for him as opposed to Kyle Kendrick.
He's coming off of 2 very good years, Andrew and Tyler, with the Pittsburgh Pirates, and of course the Pirates made the playoffs last year and actually won the NLDS round. But Burnett was a member of the 2009 starting rotation for the New York Yankees, which defeated the Phillies in the World Series that year. But there was a guy who had worlds of talent as a young pitcher for the Marlins and never really harnessed it. But over time, as he matured, he was always a hard thrower. Now he doesn't throw with quite as much velocity, but he still gets a lot of strikeouts. He led the National League last year, 9.8 strikeouts per 9 innings, and you know he'll pitch around 200 innings, and hopefully an improved Phillies bullpen. They can save some games for him, as they will for Lee and Hamels, and yet to be determined is Miguel Gonzalez, the Cuban refugee, and Roberto Hernandez, the former Fausto Carmona with the Cleveland Indians. But I think they're in a lot better shape for starting pitching this year than last, considering all the injuries that beset the team.
Speaking of those injuries, do you guys think that he kind of fills the shoes of Roy Halladay? Halladay wasn't himself last year by any stretch of the imagination, but do you think he can kind of bring that production that Halladay did in maybe his first couple years with the Phillies?
I'm not sure about 100% production-wise in that regard, considering the fact that, of course, Roy Halladay came in, threw a perfect game, no-hitter, won the Cy Young. Yeah. But he'll definitely bring that leadership role. Like I said, yes, he's a veteran now, but he's a lot more mature than he was early on in his career with Florida and with Toronto. Going from the Yankees, where he kind of spiraled out, to Pittsburgh, where he was able to kind of harness his talent back in. And I think now he's a mature voice. He'll be able to talk to the young arms on that team, and he'll bring that veteran leadership. So I think that'll be very, very big, along with talent too. Like I said, yes, he's up there in age, but he still has some talent left in that body for a year.
What Roy Halladay gave the Phillies in 2010 and 2011, of course, he gave them a Cy Young season in 2010, and it was the first time in 28 years that a Phillies pitcher won 20 games or more in a season, Steve Carlton being the last in 1982. prior to Halliday. So no, I agree with Tyler, Andrew. A.J. Burnett is probably not going to give us those kind of stats, but he's certainly going to do a lot better than Doc did the past 2 years when he was an injured performer and couldn't produce at that same level.
Let's take a look at the Phillies depth chart now. Kind of a newer team. Ruben Amaro keeps on bringing in people that maybe not a lot of people have heard of. But out of this depth chart, guys, who do you think steps up and establishes themselves as the marquee player in this lineup?
I think you're going to have to see, I think really this, as far as proving yourself goes, and in the starting lineup, this is going to have to be the year for Cody Asche. We saw last year he looked really good. I mean, he had his mishaps here and there, but obviously he's a rookie. He's got to work out the kinks. But now if he's going into camp and he can win that starting job from maybe a Freddie Galvis or Kevin Franzen, which I think everyone is already saying he has, I think if he can establish himself as a solid everyday third baseman and really be a presence later in the lineup, I think that'll be really good for him to kind of break out. And while the Phillies may not be too high up in the standings, at least they'll have a good young third baseman to be proud of.
Well, I think they are going to be high up in the standings, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the veterans are going to be healthy and they're going to produce. And when the Phillies core group of Ryan Howard, Chase Utley, Jimmy Rollins are healthy, they have produced, and they produced probably the greatest period of Phillies baseball, winning the National League East 5 straight years from 2007 through 2011. They went to back-to-back World Series in 08 and 09. And I know people just don't want to look at history and say, okay, but that's past. And the team did so poorly the last 2 years that's probably closer to the level at which they'll perform this season. But you had Ryan Howard playing the last 2 years essentially on one leg. Chase Utley showed what he could do last year when he was almost completely healthy. And it may be that Jimmy Rollins and some of the others weren't as motivated, even though they're a little bit older. I think Larry Boa is going to help re-energize Jimmy Rollins, who's a terrific player, and who this year will probably become the Phillies' all-time career hits leader, surpassing Mike Schmidt. So I look for those guys to have big years. I think Marlon Byrd, he's 36 years old. Last year, 24 home runs, 88 RBI, but did a great job with both the Mets and the Pirates, and played well in the postseason as well with Pittsburgh. I think he's going to give us that bat to be a threat behind Ryan Howard in the lineup. And hopefully Dominic Brown wasn't a one-year wonder. He had 27 home runs a year ago. But at one time, he was considered the #1 prospect in all of baseball. So let's hope that he can continue to mature. Cody Asche is a good young player. And he's going to give us some good defense at third base, which we didn't have last year, unfortunately, with Michael Young, who was at the tail end of his career. A great presence in the clubhouse and a great contact hitter for most of his career. But, he retired now, and he was really at the end of his career then. And while he was a good guy to have on the team, his best playing days were behind him. So that's going to be an upgrade at third base as well. We talked about the starting pitching being better. You're going to have Carlos Ruiz, a healthy Carlos Ruiz, healthy from the beginning of the year. And Will Nieves is going to be a better backup catcher than Eric Kratz. So I think we're improved just about in every, and the bullpen, Jonathan Papelbon was another one who, when the Phillies kind of dropped out of the race, didn't perform at the same level. I think he thrives on competition. He thrives in a winning atmosphere. And if we can get him the lead late in games, I think that Jonathan Papelbon will show why he's been a premier closer for so many years.
All right, and it'll yet to be seen how the Phillies will do there down in Florida, obviously right now for spring training. But we will switch to the Fast Five segment. Rapid questions here. Tyler, will the Phillies finish over 500 and why?
No, because if they do, I think everything's going to have to go right, and unfortunately, that includes health.
All right, Dan. Should Lincoln Financial Field be able to hold a Super Bowl?
Yes, because as the PA announcer of the Eagles, maybe I would have a shot at announcing it.
All righty. Tyler, favorite Phillies moment that Dan's called?
The favorite Phillies moment that I was there for was probably the 2009, one of the first home games, the 08 ring ceremony. I think that was truly special.
And speaking of the ring, Dan, how often do you break out the ring in public?
I break it out for special occasions like this. And a lot of people like to see it up close, which they don't ordinarily get a chance to do. So I'm happy to oblige.
Alrighty, and Dan, you've called games in so many different arenas and sporting venues. What is your favorite to call a game and why?
Well, it's hard to pick one team or one game or one site. Like a lot of times people say, what do you like best, announcing the Phillies or announcing the Eagles? Well, it's like asking you to choose between your children. I have two wonderful children, a son Darren and a daughter Courtney, and I love them both dearly. And I love the Phillies and the Eagles both dearly and equally, and really don't want to offend the other by saying one is my favorite. I consider it an enormous privilege to announce both. Incidentally, I'll give you just one call before we leave. Now batting for the Phillies, number 26, second baseman Chase Utley.
I think that's a great note
That
to go out
was
on.
beautiful. We can't end on any higher note than that. Thank you very much for tuning in with us, and thank you, Dan, for coming. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, you can reach us at our email, lasalletv@lasalle.edu. You can also log on to our website, lasalle.edu/LasalleTV. We're also on social media, as we should be in this day and age. You can find us on Twitter, SportsTalk Phila. Mine's Andrew J. Albert 01. On Facebook, search Sports Talk Philadelphia, and keyword search on YouTube, Sports Talk Philadelphia. For Tyler and Dan, I'm Andrew Albert. Thank you for tuning. We'll see you next week.